Good afternoon. My name is Seamus Mulconroy. I am the General Secretary of the Catholic Primary Schools Management Association. I'm joined today by my colleague Miriam McCabe, one of our education advisors and a principal with 24 years teaching experience, 15 as the principal of a school in Oldcastle, County Meath. We are the support organisation for over 2,800 schools and almost 23,000 members of boards of management. We provide advice to schools on a wide range of issues, ranging from admissions to HR, finance, parental complaints, bullying and the myriad of other issues faced by schools. We also provide training to boards of management and last year held 33 training sessions and represent boards in discussions with the DES and other stakeholders. There are three fundamental points I'd like to make about the legislation that is before us. We've been invited here to comment on the Equal Status Admissions Bill 2016. The three fundamental points I would want to make on this issue are: no Catholic school wishes to exclude any child from the benefits of a Catholic education. In almost 95% of our schools, we will take everyone who applies. Our schools are welcoming and diverse, dedicated to the full development of the child, not to indoctrination. The school that my child attends would be a pretty good example. It basically reflects the geographical area in which it is situated and takes everyone and all comers. The difficulties, though, that schools, parents and pupils face are really about resources, not religion. There is a growing issue of oversubscription, mainly found in the Dublin area and the commuter belt, such as Meath and Kildare, but sometimes flaring up in other locations. We've been looking at this issue for a while. Last year, we identified about 21 schools in the greater Dublin area where there was a problem with oversubscription. This year, we've identified 42, and in 17 of those schools, there was an issue with baptism. That equates to about 1.2% of rejected applications. There in the, sorry, I'll just give you the figures here. There were approximately 26,968 applications to Catholic primary schools who completed a survey for us. Of these, 19,218 were successful, and of the remainder, only 1.2% were unsuccessful due to any issue with a baptismal cert. The key point that I am making is that this issue really is around a lack of school places in some geographical locations. And the bill which is before us is an admissions bill. It will not add one school place. It will not solve the problem. And the fundamental issue, as I would point out, is resources. We need to investigate what is really going on in terms of oversubscription, and we need to identify where extra school places are needed and put them in as a matter of urgency. The bill itself is a little bit unclear. It does not define the catchment area, which is core to what the bill is about, nor does it define how a school can prove that it has taken in sufficient numbers of its own denomination to prove that it has in fact satisfied local need. So these are two big areas, and we would have a real concern that if the bill was to go through, it will not solve the problems we are facing, but it could create a field day for lawyers who would have a merry time trying to figure out loopholes, and could in fact pit school against each other. Because if you allow schools to define their catchment area, there is nothing to say that catchment areas cannot overlap. For this reason, we think the bill is premature, and we would urge the committee to investigate what in fact is going on with oversubscription in the greater Dublin area. Thank you.
Seamus.
Sorry, I think it's very interesting that we've had the legislation drafted and we've had a long debate on religious issues in schools without hard data, which is precisely why we surveyed the schools in the Dublin area, to provide hard data and to give us a picture of what's going on. If you look at most Catholic primary schools, they will take anybody who turns up. That means, in point of fact, that our schools are actually very diverse. And if you go to Balladreen or to Portlaoise, you will find schools which have significant Muslim populations. So there is no barrier to entry other than a lack of places. It is not our desire to have wholly Catholic schools. In point of fact, in the Dublin area, I know of no Catholic primary school that is wholly Catholic. There are significant populations from other faiths and significant numbers of people who are of no faith. The issue is a lack of school places. Policy should be driven by data, not by anecdote. If communities are having specific problems, and I am very aware and cognizant of challenges faced by the Muslim community, then we need to understand what is happening. The Deputy asked a very interesting question. Were there specific areas where there was a problem with the baptismal cert? It tends to be concentrated, so it's not evenly distributed. There tends to be kind of 15 or 16 here, 15 or 16 there. Because when we did the initial research, the first returns were coming from schools where, there were absolutely none because they were taking everybody. So it is concentrated in certain pockets, and I think that really needs to be addressed. If you look at the data, then there are certain areas, and this is a point we would make, oversubscription is increasing. There was a survey done, I think about a year and a half ago, of diocesan secretaries asking them, where are their problems, and at that stage we identified about 21 schools. We've now identified in total about 42 areas that are under pressure, and of those there were 17 where the baptismal cert comes in. The worst case is a particular location where there were 402 applications for 208 places. I think there were roughly 16 refusals based on baptism, but, and this is important, there were somewhere between 6 and 8 of people who were not baptised but were brought in because of the sibling rule. So this idea that there is some kind of blanket desire to keep people out is absolutely incorrect. Deputy Burton mentioned about the issue of could we get an overall picture of what's going on in schools. We actually asked the Department of Education for that information. They said to us that it wasn't compulsory for schools to do it, and they seemed to be unsure of some of the data they had, and therefore were not willing to publish it. We would love for that information to be made public, because what you will find, and I am absolutely convinced of this, is that Catholic schools are reflecting the populations of the areas that they're in. There is an issue in some areas, and I'm not sure whether this is around perception or fact, that students, Catholic students from outside the catchment area, and most schools in Dublin are operating some variation of a catchment area, are getting preference in Catholic schools and therefore excluding others. The issue for us is that there are 3 parishes in Dublin which do not have Catholic primary schools, and therefore parishes around them have to take that overflow. So that may be contributing to a perception that there is an issue on that. I would love to see more hard data driving policy so that we can identify where there is a problem, deal with it now as quickly as we can, and then ensure that we predict where problems will arrive in the future. Our schools are reflective of the communities in which they live. But I would also raise an issue which has not been raised and which should be. It is very interesting. I was speaking to my colleague in the Edmund Rice Trust, and they operate 33 primary schools. Almost all of them are DEIS schools. Almost all of them have a focus on special needs and on minority communities. Not one of them is oversubscribed. So there's something going on here that has less to do with religion and more to do with, I think, other factors. And Catholic schools are often being picked out as the ones who are somehow to blame for all of this. I would remind people that we have the majority of DEIS schools, and we cater to some of the most marginalised community, and my colleagues in the Edmund Rice Trust would be great exemplars. They run fantastic schools in the inner city and in other town locations. Also, if you look at the issue of where there is pressure in rural areas, what do we see happening? The department sometimes refers to white flight. In point of fact, what they're talking about is middle-class flight from town schools, which may have an immigrant population, to smaller schools on the outskirts, and that actually creates problems for some of our schools on the outskirts. So there is much more going on in admissions than religion, and a sole focus on religion is avoiding the bigger picture of what's going on. I'd like to turn briefly to ask my colleague to show or to describe how she deals with the issue of opt-outs in her own school.
Thank you. I've just recently joined CPSMA. I'm actually a teaching principal, and to be honest, it has come as news to me because, as was indicated, in the rural community that I come from, everybody is welcome. We're one of those schools that would have the "we're open, please come and see us," because we welcome everybody. And I do find, I suppose maybe it's the teacher in me, I do find the idea that a child is left sitting at the back of the classroom just a very sad image, and not one that I actually have experience of. And I can only talk from my own experience. We would, rather than focus on an opt-out, we would actually have, well, an opt-in. And it's all about what the parents want, what level of engagement. You know, we have children who are not from the Catholic faith in our school and have had no problems ever, I have to say, with, and it's all been about, what parents want, and that's what we provide. And those children sing in choirs and bring up gifts if they wish. They're very much part, all the artistic activities related to. These children are very much included and never ever found sitting at the back of a classroom. So, I would really want to emphasise that point. And I'm quite sure, and I know colleagues in local schools to my own, it's not the case either.